Bailey?
Here.
Baker?
Here.
Casper? Casari?
Here.
Chase?
Here.
Cologne?
Here.
Crockett Hubbard?
Here.
Dean Shinbrot?
Here.
DeSiller Fleming?
Here.
Eben? Oops,
Here.
sorry. You were supposed to be at the bottom. She's here. Fitzgerald?
Here.
Flax?
Here.
Fortner?
Here.
Foster?
Here.
Frickman?
Here.
D. Gothier?
Here.
L. Gothier?
Here.
Gustafson?
Here.
Hanscom?
Here.
Jones?
Here.
Kotowski? Lambert?
Here.
Luck?
Here.
Mello Miller?
Here.
Merritt?
Here.
Osman?
Here.
Perry? Powers, K? Powers, S?
Here.
Richards?
Here.
Rusk?
Here.
Selva?
Here.
Starkley? Stevenson?
Here.
Thomas?
Here.
Washington?
Here.
Wells?
Here.
Whitehouse?
Here.
And Whitney? Whitney? Okay,
Yeah, I'm surprised.
I thought I saw him earlier. Okay. I have 37.
And Eben. Here.
Eben, yep,
you
you're
got that.
37.
Yep, thanks.
37. Did I not see Michael?
All right, at this time, I'd like to rise and have a moment of silence. Oh, there's Whitney. He just came in.
Michael?
Yeah. Representative Merritt, would you please lead us in the pledge? Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So the first item on our agenda is to approve our minutes. Do I have a motion? Lisa Luck made the motion, and who was this? Washington?
Adams.
Oh, Adams, thank you. Was the second. So we have a motion on the floor to approve the minutes from our January meeting. Is there any discussion on this? Representative Stevenson?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Section J9, resolution adopting the 32nd RTM rules and procedures. I believe I voted in favor of that modification, and I do not see my name listed. I'm not sure if someone's added an error or if the count is wrong, but
J9, so if you, you believe you voted in favor?
yes.
Okay, I'll review and I'll certainly make the adjustment because I only listed those in favor. I'll look that for you. Okay.
Thank you.
Representative Fortner?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Page
vote right
2, it refers to me asking the question of the speaker, and the owner of Dunkin' Donuts stated that she ordered 174,000 straws for one store during 2019. That was actually for the year for all of her stores, rather than one. I believe it's 6 stores. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. I had one change. There were a few typos I pointed out, which I won't go through, but then on page 8, where it says that I reminded the body of exuberant residents from Deerfield that expressed their desire to have the court repaired, I was just going to ask to strike exuberant, because I don't know if that's the right way to characterize them, and I don't remember having said that, so. So thank you. So we have any other discussion on that? Seeing none, all in favor of approving the minutes from our January meeting as amended, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Frickman? And Gauthier.
Okay.
Thank you. That motion carries, 35 in favor, 2 abstentions.
37. We have 38 now.
Oh, okay, sorry. 36 in favor, 2 abstentions.
What?
Al Guthier.
Al Guthier.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, this is the portion of the RTM agenda where the RTM welcomes comments from citizens. Each presentation should be limited to 3 minutes or less, and citizens should, if possible, submit written comments. Presentations should be limited to matters pertinent to Groton. The moderator, or members through me, shall ask questions only in order to clarify the speaker's presentation. Responses may be given by the moderator and/or by the town manager, and citizens should make their presentations from the lectern and state their name and address for the record. Do we have any?
Yes, we do. I've got a written sheet, sorry about that. Well, we're first running down to get the sheet.
Sydney Van Zant, please, followed by Larry Dunn.
Good evening. I wish to support the
Can you say
banning.
your name and your address, please, for the record?
My name is Sydney F. Van Zant. I live at 3 Front Street in Noank, Connecticut. And I would start by saying I support the banning of plastics in the town of Groton. The closest other town is Stonington, for starts. I would give a little background on me. I am co-founder of the Groton Open Space Association, Bluff Point Advisory Council, and various other state organizations. I don't represent them, but I have been working on the environment for over 50 years. And in 1970, March, we finished the $350,000 fundraiser to save the town's portion of the Haley Farm. 1 month later was International Earth Day, and I formed with the late professor from the town, from the Avery Point, David McCain, and we started the Environmental Education Committee. And one of the things that happened was there were 800 people that ended up at Avery Point on Earth Day. They came by every possible way, boat, by bike, by horse, and they were all there to celebrate this earth. One of the groups that formed from there were the high school kids, and they started recycling in the town of Groton. They started with 3 barrels over at the town annex, 4 white, brown, green glass. And it was so popular that we had so many barrels up there and we had to break them down, and the union for the drivers ended up taking it up to Dayville, and then the papers came. It was totally successful, and everyone in this town supported recycling. I would like to then say that in 1981, my husband and I moved to Virginia to build a steel boat. We did 2 transatlantics and a 6-year circumnavigation. And we saw so much plastic over those 90,000 plus miles that we traveled all the way around the world. And so this vote is not a vote for Groton, Connecticut. This is a vote for the world. And we have to set an example here, and you have to vote.
Your time is up.
Yes.
Can you?
Thank you.
Thank you. Larry Dunn, followed by Aaron Cain.
Thank you. Larry Dunn, 91 Crosswinds Drive, Groton. When I was here last, as part of the presentation, so I don't want to repeat that, but I do want to clarify 2 points that I thought was raised from you and provide some feedback on those points. First one was, business response and input on the plastics ban itself. And what I said was, in my corporate life, is 100% of the companies I work with, had sustainable and green programs. That wasn't a statement of Groton, that was a statement of my personal background. So I felt incumbent upon me to go out and research what's going on with corporations that have businesses in Groton. So I did do that. No surprise, 100%. Have sustainability programs. And I'm talking about Walmart, Big Y, Aldi's, McDonald's, Dunkin' Donuts, Wendy's as the big ones. All of them except Wendy's are committed by 2025 to eliminate styrofoam and any plastic that's not recyclable, which means the plastic straws we use today will be eliminated by those corporations by 2025. So the other thing that I found as I read through their annual reports is they started doing it because of resistance and feedback from the towns, but as they got into it, they made this startling discovery. It improved their profitability from a corporate level. So that kind of accelerated the plans, which is why, when I say 100%, it's 100%. The second question raised was, what's the cost impact? So I did look through, and when I talk about cost, as I mentioned, it's life cycle cost, because most plastics and styrofoams, only a small percentage, straws actually being the worst, at about 7% of the cost of a straw to us is in the purchase price of the straw. The rest of it is through taxes that we pay for cleanup, et cetera, because straws are not recyclable in the current waste management system that we have. So when you work through the numbers, by switching from plastic straws to paper straws, even though paper straws are 0.01% cost more, the annual savings per family to Groton citizens is $6.72 per year per family savings. That's assuming every corporation puts in the price of the increased price of the straw into the product sale. And I mean by that is people don't really sell plastic straws, they sell a drink. The drink may be $3, $4, $5, and so the price of a straw is infinitesimal, well, 0.25%. So those are the 2 points I really wanted to kind of reinforce from the questions that you asked. And with that, I'll yield the floor.
Thank you. Aaron Cain, followed by Eleanor Fisher.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Hi, everybody. My name is Aaron Cain. I'm a recent college grad.
And just give your address.
Oh, and I live at 51 Jupiter Point Road in Groton, Connecticut. I'm a recent college grad. I'm 22 years old. So, looking around, I'm not, necessarily the youngest person here, but, probably one of the younger people at this forum. So I have this point of view that's probably, tossed around a lot. It's very cliche, but it's very true in that this is our world that's getting passed down to us, just as this was your world getting passed down from your parents when everyone else, when you were young. I see this as a very small change, personally. It's not the last change that will happen either. I think plastics were banned like a little bit ago, like disposable plastics. I didn't do any research for this, but I will say that just like on the top of my head, I would say that the future is not in disposable plastics. It's not in styrofoam. We're gonna find like different things to use in the future. We're gonna have to. And I would say that I think it would be a very attractive thing for Groton City to be ahead of the curve on this issue. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Eleanor Fisher, followed by Frederick Fisher.
Good evening. My name is Eleanor Fisher. I live at 26 Main Street in Groton. I'll be very brief because I know a lot of people are speaking. I would like you to support the ban on plastics for the future of my children and my grandchildren. Aaron just spoke. My oldest grandson will be going to college in 2 years. So I want them to have a future at least as good or better than what we have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Frederick Fisher, followed by Michael Cain.
Hi, I'm Frederick Fisher, 26 Main Street. I support the ordinance on banning the plastic. And picking up on where Sydney left off, it is a global problem. And just to cite that old expression that's been around for quite a while, think global and act local. So we have a chance to do that here and catch up with some of the other municipalities that have already been doing it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Michael Cain, followed by Eugenia Villagra.
Good evening. Thank you, Madam Chair. Michael Cain, 51 Jupiter Point Road. The decision whether to ban styrofoam cups and other products isn't being made in this room tonight. In fact, that decision has already been made. The choice being made here is far more important. It is whether this town puts itself in opposition to or in favor of that position. It's largely symbolic. I want to read an article here I've got. This is 2018, February 7th, Dunkin' Donuts to eliminate foam cups worldwide in 2020. As part of its commitment to serve both people and the planet responsibly, Dunkin' Donuts, a leading retailer of hot brewed coffee, today announced plans to eliminate all polystyrene foam cups in its global supply chain beginning in spring 2018, with a targeted completion date of 2020, this year. In US restaurants, Dunkin' Donuts will replace the foam cup with the new double-walled paper cup. We are already behind the curve. As a member of the Planning Commission and now Planning and Zoning Commission for over 17 years, we are starting the process of working on the development at the Mystic Education Center. It's a development that by design is hoping to attract young people to live here, like my son. What is the image that Groton wishes to project to these young people? What is the headline? That a cup of coffee will cost you 2 cents less if you move to Groton? And that we want you to live here? I'm sorry. That the cost of coffee will cost you 2 cents less if you move to Groton, or that we want you to live here and that we care about your future? What is the message that voting to defeat this proposal will send to them? This is marketing 101. For me, I want to be part of the solution, however small. Thank you.
Thank you. Eugenia Villagra, followed by Victor Villagra.
My name is Eugenia Villagra. I live at 76 Riverview Avenue in Groton. Good evening. My name is Eugenia Villagra, and I'm co-chair of Groton Conservation Advocates. Our group has been advocating for this critically important plastic ban for over a year now. I recently attended a terrific RTM Community Development and Services Committee meeting that voted 5-1 in support of the ordinance. Tonight, I would like to respond to one of the arguments made to justify vetoing the ordinance at that meeting, that waste-to-energy facilities, in other words, incineration facilities, are green and good for Connecticut. This, very briefly, is what I found out about plastic incineration that underscores the reason why we must remove as much plastic as we can from our solid waste stream. First, after conducting a massive study In 2016, Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection concluded that one of Connecticut's 2024 waste disposal goals would be to retire existing incineration facilities in favor of better, cleaner waste conversion technologies. Why? Incineration is a method of waste treatment that involves the burning of commercial, residential, and hazardous waste from food scraps and paper to plastics and metals. Incinerator companies like to advertise that their facilities are good neighbors because they offer a safe process that eliminates waste. Not completely, it turns out. 25% of the weight of incoming trash remains as residual, sometimes toxic ash that still requires landfilling. It also, they say, enables robust recycling programs. Not really. It turns out that when cities, towns, and businesses are tied up in contracts to incinerate their waste, reduction, recycling, and composting programs fail to flourish. Also, the facilities generate renewable energy. Studies are showing that incinerators waste energy and contribute to climate change. The notion that these facilities make good neighbors is also a stretch. Burning waste harms the environment, the health, environment, and economy of many communities, especially low-income communities. The perceived benefits aren't worth the risk. Even the most technologically advanced incinerators release pollutants that contaminate our air, soil, and water. When plastic in particular is burned, it releases dangerous chemicals such as hydrochloric acid, sulfuric dioxide, dioxins, furans, heavy metals, as well as particulates. These emissions are known to cause respiratory ailments and stress human immune systems, and they're potentially carcinogenic. And it's most often people of color living in low-income neighborhoods who live in closest proximity to those emissions, making this a social justice issue. So the more plastic that stays out of our waste stream, the better off we are. The Plastic Ordinance is an important step in the right direction. It will get us closer to GCA's, the town's, and the state's goal of promoting a cleaner, greener, and therefore healthier Groton.
Okay.
Thank you.
Victor Villagra, followed by Howard Weiss.
Casper's here now.
Okay. So that's 39 people.
39.
My name is Victor Villagra, 76 Riverview Avenue, Norrin, Connecticut, and I'm actually here to read the RTM testimony on plastic ordinance submitted by Dr. Sema Eben. So these are her words. I'm writing to thank the Conservation Commission for their work on delivering this plastic ordinance and the Groton Town Council for passing it. I urge the RTM to retain this new ordinance for the health and the well-being of Groton's environment and residents. Plastics are synthetic polymers that were actually first developed to help conserve elephants, created as a replacement for the use of ivory by Alexander Parks, who unveiled Parkinson, if I pronounce that correctly, the first man-made plastic at the 1862 Great International Exhibition in London. After World War II, there was a redirection of production from military use to civilian consumption, and a huge array of new plastics and new plastic uses came into being. Made from fossil fuels, plastics are relatively inexpensive to create, lightweight, strong, durable, buoyant, suitable for a wide variety of uses and purposes. The same qualities that made them attractive to manufacturers made them problematic in the environment, particularly in marine ecosystems. Their buoyancy allows them to be distributed widely by ocean and coastal currents. They can settle out in sediments and persist for long periods of time. In fact, plastics may get smaller, but really do not degrade. For a long time, plastic debris and litter were ignored, usually just considered an eyesore. In fact, even I thought of litter in this way for a long time, even though I grew up with a mother who had us wear, quote, I bought pool, quote, I-B-O-T-P-U-L, and that stands for I bend over to pick up litter, pins, and actually made us bought pool. This change, this change, the more I learned, and last summer when I traveled to Bermuda, the immense amount of plastic debris floating in the water was a real wake-up call. I emerged from my morning swimming covered in small plastic particles. They covered the water surface, the beach, and clung to my skin as well. It was absolutely shocking. Bermuda sits on the edge of a great Atlantic garbage patch. There are other patches within the gyres that circulate in the other ocean basins as well. The literature I have read indicates that plastics are the #1 component of marine debris worldwide, comprising 60% of beach litter and 90% of floating debris.
Victor, thank you. I will have that put in the record, so that's fine.
Thank you.
Oh, Representative Casper is online.
Just say hello. Representative Casper? Say that again.
So we have 39 members at this point. Okay.
Got it.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Villagra. Howard Weiss, followed by Ann Schmidt.
Thank you. My name is Howard Weiss. I live at 10 Prospect Street in Mystic, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening in support of the ordinance. Limiting single-use plastic may seem like a small thing, but it is in fact a very significant one. The ordinance deals with plastics that end up in our waterways, on our land, and ultimately, after fragmenting in the ocean or being incinerated into the air, in our bodies. This and similar ordinances address the problem in the same way it was created, bag by bag, straw by straw, container by container. It's a long haul, but that simply means there's no time to lose. More broadly, the ordinance reflects the fact that each of us has a responsibility to protect the environment, and that each little decision to consume or conserve, to contribute to the pollution or to the preservation of our waters, land, and air is a decision that, in the aggregate, has enormous consequences. From all I've seen in my years in Mystic, we're a town, and Groton, we're a town, an area of well-informed and responsible citizens. If we don't lead the way, then who? The effort to save our environment, and ultimately ourselves, has to take root on the local level and grow from there, as other great movements, such as the Civil Rights Movement, have done in the past. As I understand it, we joined 20 Connecticut communities that have already passed similar ordinances, and by joining them, we build on their momentum and encourage others to join as well. For those with doubts, I urge you to consider the vast numbers of dead fish and birds that have washed ashore or been raised in nets with innards full of plastic. The vast field of plastic stretches across the mid-Pacific and our other oceans. The plastic residue in the seafood we consume. Each of these, in terms particularly apt for this issue, should be the last straw. I applaud everyone who's worked to get this ordinance thus far, and I hope to see the job finished tonight. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Ann Schmidt, followed by Ashley Contutol.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Ann Schmidt. I live at 7 Bradley Lane. I'm a member of the Conservation Commission, and I'm in full support of the plastic ban ordinance. And I just wanted to make a couple of comments because I read through the RTM meeting minutes from January, and I thought that there were a few things that I'd like to talk about. I was particularly interested in a question by Representative Fortner that asked I guess the next speaker, Cotu, and I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, about how many plastic straws are ordered every year. And the answer, actually in the meeting minutes, I now understand we're not quite correct, but 170,000 straws per year, and I'm assuming now that that's for all 5 stores. So in the state of Connecticut, according to the Dunkin' Donuts website, there are over 500 Dunkin' Donuts locations. If each store, so not store, but each 5 stores, so order 174,000 straws, that would be equivalent to 17 million straws, and that's just Dunkin' Donuts. So if you do the same calculations for McDonald's and other Wendy's, and Larry had a number of different fast food and other organizations, that's a lot of straws. So that's, the volume is just incredible. There was also a reference to littering, and that consumers should be held accountable not to litter, and I agree completely with that statement. But that's not what this ordinance is trying to achieve. Over the life cycle of plastics, there are negative impacts to health, human health, and numerous environmental hazards. And Eugenia did a fantastic job just describing the incineration effects. So what we, and in terms of, so over the life cycle and generating plastics, using plastics, and disposing plastics, this ordinance will result in the outright reduction of the total amount of plastics, which will be good for people and good for the environment. Thank you.
Thank you. Ashley Coutu-Toll, followed by Bray Rafferty.
Good evening, Ashley Coutu-Toole, 113 Whitaker Drive. My name has been mentioned a lot tonight. I'd like to start just by thanking you guys for allowing me to have the time here tonight. My mom and I are franchise owners of 5 Dunkin' Donuts locations in Groton, Connecticut, and this ordinance is just forcing us small businesses to impose a requirement on our customers that they don't actually want. As I've explained before, as franchisees, we don't have the choice in the products that we order. And for example, the change from the styrofoam cup to the paper cup was a process that took Dunkin' over 10 years. I've been pushed by people on the Conservation Commission and others as well to push Dunkin' brands to get better alternatives, but that's just not how it works for us. In July 2018, our COO, Scott Murphy, explained the over 10-year-long process and how they tested cup after cup, worked with Starbucks and Tim Hortons to find the perfect alternative. This process took over 10 years because these things matter to our customers. Our customers are very passionate, and every little part of their order matters to them. And at this point, there are no alternatives that satisfy what our customers are looking for. And Stonington does have an ordinance in effect, but it doesn't apply to their fast food chains. So the Dunkin' Donuts in Stonington did transition to paper straws. They are now back at plastic straws because the customer feedback was so terrible, and some people did not return till their plastic straws came back. Several other Dunkin' locations had tried posting signs to ask for customers to request the straws. Those signs have now been removed because of negative customer feedback. They were very upset to have to request the straw, and they saw a negative outcome in their business for that. I've spoken before about the burden of the cost increase that this is going to place on businesses. And contrary to some belief, we do not have 1,000% profit on our beverages. Every little part matters. It's a tough business state to be doing business in, and costs do add up. And I know it tends to think that people are willing to pay 2 or 3 cents more for their cup of coffee because of this, but it's just not the case. A recent local Dunkin' Donuts had posted online that they were, the prices would be different because of the new tax increase. Comments were they would make coffee at home. They would go someplace cheaper. That is a cost effect that the business had zero control over, but still negatively impacted them because people are not willing to pay that price difference. We're in a very competitive market, and every customer really does matter to us, and an ordinance such as this is just likely to cause us to lose some customers. The National Center for Policy Analysis conducted a survey in Los Angeles County after a plastic bag ban went into effect. During a 1-year period before and after that ban, they found a majority of the stores within the area of the ban had a 6% decline in sales, while those outside of the ban had a 9% increase in sales.
Thank you. Can you please wrap it up?
Sure. So thank you for your time. It's not that we are against a ban or against changing the environment. I just feel like maybe this is something that the voters of the town of Groton should be voting on so that we can really see how they feel about this matter.
All right, we have Bray Rafferty, followed by Jane Coutu.
Good evening. My name is Bray Rafferty of 98 Somerset Drive in Mystic. I'm also representing the Groton Town Council. The Groton Town Council has worked very hard in the past 2 years working toward the end of this to get an ordinance to ban plastics, single-use plastics, in place in the town. We've worked with the Town Council. We've worked with the Planning Department. We've also worked with the Economic Development Commission within the town. We've held a business plastic forum for input on the development of this particular ordinance. And so we've stretched out as wide as a net as we could to include as many people for input onto this ordinance on banning of single-use plastics to make it work. It's a small start in a very big problem. There's an awful lot of plastics that are out in the environment, and we are trying to do something locally. We do not have any control on corporations, large corporations, on how they move their products, but we do have a voice in our local habitat. We have a voice in our town about how we wish our environment to look and to be safe for not only for us, but also for our children, grandchildren, as well as all the organisms that are out there. We're a coastal community, so we impact immediately right along the shoreline, which happens to be part of the world's oceans. So we're directly connected to the rest of the world. As a result, this ordinance begins a process where we are trying to get a hold of what are the things out there that are a problem, how might you develop a solution to at least part of the problem, and continuing to work on the elimination of what we see now out in the oceans today. And I look at this ordinance as a great beginning going in that direction. So I hope you vote favorably for it tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Jane Kuchu, followed by Zell Stever.
Good evening, Jane Kuto, 1064 Paquonic Road, Groton, Connecticut. I wanted to start by saying I'm sad to see Groton did not stand by the fast food businesses as Stonington considerably did. They were able to understand and see the difference, as Groton was not. I wonder if they even wanted to spend the time or even cared to. It seems as it was we will do what we want to scenario in Groton. What is next, I wonder? 0.01 is not our cost, as some may lead you to believe. I'm not sure why they have such disrespect. And when they say that, they make it sound like that's what it is. It's not ours. I assure you, my daughter, Ashley, gave the figures in the last meeting. I do care for the future, too. I honestly do. People, may rally around saying or thinking that we don't, but we do. I feel I live in one of the worst states, and now maybe one of the worst towns, because I feel this is only a beginning to fight against, what is other people feels right. And one more thing I want to say. I'm sure that Duncan is working on alternatives that will be great for the environment and that our guests will love. But these pushes for immediate action are having consequences that are not solving our problems. For example, Starbucks came out with an alternative lid that doesn't require a straw, but their current lid and straw combo is 3.55 grams, but their new lid is 11 grams of plastic, which is putting more plastic into our environment, but is apparently acceptable just because there is no straw attached. Thank you for your time. I know everybody's mind is up, but there are some things and points that need to come across. Thank you.
Thank you. Zell Stever, followed by Kristen Distante.
Good evening, Madam Moderator, members of the RTM. I'm Zell Stever. I live at 81 Main Street in Noank. And I'm here on behalf to speak on behalf of supporting this ban of single-use plastics. This has been over a 2-year effort that's been led by the Groton Conservation Commission, which has done a terrific job working with a bunch of other organizations in the community, economic development, and so forth. This has been a huge effort by the town council to come up with this ordinance, and I'd like to also thank the town of Groton staff that actually did a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of developing this particular ordinance. And I think you've done a very good job, and I would commend to the RTM that you support and pass this ordinance, or at least not block the ordinance. Now, I'd like to say another small item that I think a number of us are very much supportive of good businesses in our community. But I'd also like to say that I think the business has a responsibility for taking some leadership responsibilities here in helping support this sort of thing. This is good for, in the long term, for the community and for the environment. And so with that, I'd like to thank you and hope you pass this ordinance tonight.
Thank you. Kristen Distante, followed by Joe Dela Cruz.
Hi, I'm Kristen Distante, 82 Irving Street, and I just wanted to thank you all for listening to my presentation last time. As Kawatowski pointed out, she had heard it 3 times, as some of you have. But hopefully in the time since then, you've had some time to sort of research the issue and learn more about it. And as you're aware, the plastic right now is being pumped into the environment at an unbelievable rate. Each one of us is eating a credit card every week because it's in the air, it's in the water, it's in the food, it's everywhere. Unfortunately, there's almost no market at this point in time for the plastic recycling because China's not taking it anymore. It's either being warehoused, it's getting into the environment, it's being burned, or landfilled. So the recycling thing is just not working. We, taxpayers, we that pay the taxes, we're paying the cost of disposing of all this plastic that's coming out of the fast food chains because we have to pay for the disposal. For every, Larry did the math, for every plastic bag that's out there, it costs the store owner a penny to buy it. It costs 17 cents to dispose of it in terms of trucking it, landfilling it, burning it, whatever. So I just want to give a little analogy to you. If you have a friend over for dinner and they cut themselves while they're cooking with you and they're bleeding all over the floor, what do? You don't mop up the blood. You stop the bleeding at the source. All right? The source is this stuff, the plastic that's being produced. To solve the problem, we can't be out on the beaches and in the oceans scooping it up. We've got to stop putting it out there. People are doing it. I think I mentioned last time the EU. In 2021, they're banning cutlery plates, straws, stirrers, balloon sticks, cotton swabs, styrofoam, food and drink containers. Yesterday, in the U.S. Senate, Senate Bill 3263 was put on the floor. There's quite a few pieces in it, but one of the pieces is requiring corporations to take responsibility for their own plastic. They're going to have to design a plan when they produce it, what's its end product. So that's actually in the Senate as we speak, and there's other stuff in that bill as well. I believe that you know that supporting this is the right thing to do. Supporting the ordinance, not voting to veto it. It might not be convenient. It might not be easy for everyone. It might be a little more expensive for some, but it's right. Abolition wasn't easy. Abolition was expensive for some people, but it was right. Allowing women and minorities to vote wasn't easy. It was inconvenient for white men of power who had all the power, but it was right. Banning cigarettes in restaurants. People used to smoke in restaurants, buses, planes, trains, everywhere. People had a fit. Restaurants are going to go out of business. It's terrible. It's going to be the end. The business no, you know what? We all dealt with it. It's fine. We wouldn't want to go back there now. So this is the same kind of thing. This ordinance is a small start in removing the plastic for our environment. It might not be convenient for some of the big corporations.
Please wrap it up.
Okay?
Thank you.
They'll get over it. Thank you in advance for doing the right thing. And I just want to show you a solution. There's a glass straw with a little scrubby, a little cleaning brush. Yeah, a little cleaning brush in here. And Representative Whitehorse had mentioned, oh, there it is. He had mentioned a complaint. He liked the feeling of the straw. So anyway, here's a little straw, glass straw, problem solved. Here you go.
Thank you. State Representative Dela Cruz, followed by Lynn Marshall.
Joe Dela Cruz, 95 Quarry Road. I want to thank the council for passing what they did pass and why it's here before you tonight. And I want to let you guys know, before I got up to Hartford, I was Pave It Joe. I probably was at odds a lot with environmentalists. I just thought you just pave everything. Let's build something where there's not anything now, and that's how we'll solve all of our problems. We'll get more taxes. And all that sounds good until we're faced up in Hartford with folks that come to us with facts. And the fact is that there is an absolute mountain of plastic that we have to deal with at some point in time. I am very sympathetic to the owners of the business. I go to that Dunkin' Donuts, I know the one you own, every day. And I understand that the coffee will cost more probably, and I also understand the fear that many folks will have. If you're a business owner, you can't afford to lose one nickel or one dime. But the fact is the problem's too big. And it's too big to ignore. And the kids, the young kid that got up here and spoke, Mr. Cain earlier, this is going to be his world. And we're forced to leave him with something either that's going to look like the ocean out in the Pacific coast, or what happened, that gentleman that just said he was swimming in the Bahamas. There's a reality, and we're all environmentalists. Every single one of us are, deep down inside, but we haven't been woken up. I've actually been woken up. I've had folks come to my office and explain the plastic. The plastic 10-cent on the bag, I absolutely got destroyed on Facebook, and people tell me I ruined their life up on the 10 cents and that. Like it was, and I have messages from people that are very upset about that. But the reality is the folks that came in and said it needed to be done told me in Connecticut with a 3.5 million population, we use 700 million plastic bags a year before we did this. As a state, as a country, 900 billion plastic bags in 1 year. There has to be a point where we sit back and say, enough's enough. I was actually embarrassed to see all the stuff my grandson got at his shower. Before he was born, he had a bigger impact on the environment than most African nations. And it sounds funny, but that's where we're at. We have to start, and again, when I say we're all environmentalists and we don't know it, let somebody sit in your car tomorrow and light up a cigar right next to you. Instantly, we become environmentalists. And the reason we're not environmentalists is because we don't see that big pile of plastic in the middle of the ocean. We don't see any of that. All we're doing is hearing about it. And the reality is it's gonna hurt, and it's gonna be painful at a lot of different levels, and businesses are gonna have to figure out new ways. We're American. We figure out new ways, and we're gonna sell more coffee because that's what we drink here in America. It will work out for us, but I'm just asking you guys to put that hat on. Remember, if every neighbor in your neighborhood started deciding that they were gonna let their dog do its business on your yard, you would become an instant environmentalist. But that is not something, and again, because you haven't seen it, it doesn't mean it's not happening. So I thank you guys for listening to me, and again, before I left up to Hartford, people yelling at me not to pave everything. And now that I'm seeing it through a different lens, and I think we all should take the time to do that because it's actually meaningful. It's actually something that we need to do. And thank you guys for doing this.
Thank you. Lynn Marshall, followed by John Goodrich.
Lynn Marshall, 118 Pearl Street in Groton. I'm in favor of the plastic ban ordinance. We need to move forward, no matter how much it personally inconveniences us. I now fall in the age group of the elderly, and I have been doing things the same way for a long, long time. And I have well-established habits. They have a nice flow to them. I don't have to think about them. You know, life is good, life is easy. Now I'm being asked to change everything. I have to figure out a different way of doing it. I have to go shopping, and the grumpy old lady doesn't like to go shopping either. I have to go get different stuff, and then most of all, I have to remember to do it. I can't tell you how many times I've been at the grocery store checkout line or in the drugstore and realize my plastic bags are out in the car. But, you know, I don't really want to change, but I know that I must change. We all must change because it is the right thing to do. I hope that you will agree. Thank you.
Thank you. John Goodrich, followed by Liz Raisbeck. John Goodrich.
Good evening. My name is John Goodrich, 74 Irving Street, Mystic, Connecticut. Let me get right to the point. I'm here to respectfully ask the members of the RTM not to ratify this ordinance tonight. The reason you ask, if you don't ratify the ordinance, it will be referred to referendum for the voters of the town of Groton to decide if it is right, correct, and best for our town. I think the most positive part of this discussion tonight is all of us agree on the same thing, which is we are stewards of this planet and we have to take care of it for our children, their children, and the generations to come. My issues with the present ordinance as it stands is I don't think it addresses the problems we face in the area. The methodologies to support the ordinance may be faulty or incomplete, and the facts presented to date do not support the items in the ban. I believe that matters of this gravity should be supported by facts, clear methodology, and research. I attended the original presentation, actually in this room, on the ban. After the presentation, there was a question and answer session, and the scientist that spoke was asked directly what was the major pollutant in the sound, Fisher's Island, Long Island Sound. His answer was actually plastic fibers from clothing. That is nowhere addressed in this ban. Sorry. So if it's not addressed, what are we trying to do here? Why is the major pollutant not being addressed? Secondly, I have a copy of the GCA report that was presented, I think, in multiple sessions. And here's a picture of plastic nip bottles found all over our sound. Again, not addressed in this ban. We look at what they went to 2 spots, the GCA, to find this stuff, and that micro-sampling would not be considered sufficient in any type of scientific study. I think we would be doing the residents and voters of this town a disservice to make a major decision as this without more scientific study. On the other hand, when we play devil's advocate, let's say we agree with the findings. Let's look at the pictures here in the report. It is important to note that these items that are actually in the ban, as far as straws, are found in very short supply. One photograph shows 4 straws in it with much higher levels of other contaminants. The other thing, do we know the origin of these contaminants? Any of us that have grown up around here know the way the sound and the tide tables work. Are they coming from Groton? Are they coming from other areas? Again, how does this affect our area and protect our area? To the RTMs, can you say that you've talked to people in your districts and that you know that you have a majority of people that you are here to represent that do support it? If you can't equivocally answer that question yes, then I think you're doing a disservice to the people you represent without letting it go to referendum and let them make the decision. The next point I'd like to make is unintended consequences. As Jane and Ashley spoke earlier, any type of extra stress on their business will increase the cost of their product. Let me make another point.
Please wrap it up.
Okay, in the city of Groton, you have Cumberland Farms. $1 coffees served in polystyrene and plastic straws. They're not part of the ban. Is your unintended consequence to force Jane and Ashley's customers to a business that will supply these wholesale? Thank you.
Thanks. All right, Liz Raisbeck, followed by Justin Primo.
Hi, I'm Liz Raisbeck. I live at 81 Main Street, and I'm also co-chair of Groton Conservation Advocates. There's not a lot left to be said that hasn't been said, but I can make one point, I think, that hasn't been alluded to yet. I have followed this process from the beginning, from when the council had meetings starting, I think, last February, talking about the possibility of passing an ordinance like this. They talked about it at several meetings. They came up with a proposal, which they discussed in July. They felt it had some issues. They sent it back for further work. We had the Conservation Commission do all of its work. We had the Economic Development Commission have its forum. And all of that time, nobody showed up in opposition except for 2 people at the public hearing on this ordinance, whereas well over 20 people spoke in favor. Well, I know the ladies from Duncan feel passionately about this. It seems to me from the year of work on this that most of the businesses in Groton do not have a problem with this ordinance. So I just want to add my voice in support of the ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Justin Primo. And that is it after Justin, so if you want to, is there another sign-up sheet over there? No. Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Justin Primo, 116 Elm Street, Groton. I have the luxury of living on the water on BB Cove. My back door is 35 feet from the water, and I hope in 35 years it's still 35 feet from the water. I will tell you, in the summer, the amount of garbage, and now I'm on a very protective cove, the amount of plastic garbage I see wash up on our beachfront is obscene. And that's a protective cove. I can't imagine being out on open water, being on Mystic River or, you know, Fisher's Island Sound. On protected cove, I get a lot of plastic in my yard that washes up. And it's all restaurant garbage. It's all restaurant plastic garbage. That and nips. But nips is a whole nother story. We won't even get into that. Aside from living on the water and seeing it myself personally, I'm also a business owner in town. I own a restaurant, Manana Cafe. And the plastic thing has, first it was a challenge. And I looked at it as a challenge. I was like, you know what? We're going to tackle this. We're going to make it work. Because that's what businesses do. You get something thrown at you, and you make it work. You figure it out, and you move forward with what's happening in the world. I truly feel for the women who own Duncans, because it's stuff that's beyond their control, because they're corporate. I actually can control what my choices are. So that puts them in a very tough spot, and I totally feel for them. Absolutely feel for them. But it's like, if you don't move forward, you look at, oh, God. Like, Fortune 500 companies 30 years ago, think of Xerox and Kodak. They were Fortune 500 companies 30 years ago. Now they're 10% of what those companies were, because they did not change with the times. If you don't change, if you don't move forward, you're not going to survive. And from a business perspective, you have to change. You always have to move forward. Aside from the environment, which I care about very, very much, because it's my backyard, literally.
Please wrap it up. Thanks.
It's, everyone needs to move forward and keep moving forward.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Is there anyone else at this time who would wish to speak? Town Councilor Bordelon?
Portia Bordelon, 159 Shenecosset Parkway. I'm a resident here, obviously, and also on the Town Council. I recently joined the Town Council, and this process was already started. Nothing is perfect. There's some things that, you know, could be changed or be written differently. I would have liked to see more collaboration as a town as a whole, considering the city is on a coastal front, and I do feel it's indicative that as a town that the ordinance encompasses the whole true town of Groton City, Groton Long Point, But what we have is something, it's a starting point, it's a diving point. Everything has to start somewhere. With all due respect, I do respect the business owners and Mr. Goodrich who had spoken. I can understand your perspective on it. But from my standpoint, I feel that it's important that we do start from somewhere. Even though we might not be the ones disposing the trash into the ocean and the trash is washing up on our shores, it is our responsibility to set the standard and say that we do care about not only the environment, about our future, about our health. People talk about the cost. It costs this much to pay for this and that much to pay for that. And if we increase this, it's going to cost us another amount because of the cost of the plastic to get rid of it. Most of us in here were part of that whole reduce, reuse, recycle. It was drilled into me. We used to march around. I can remember being in the Groton schools saying it over and over. And yet we really haven't come that far from that. Yet we still, most of our stuff that we purchase, not just fast food items, you walk in the grocery store. Are we making an effort to try to buy things that are in not as much plastic or packaging when you really think about how much we touch or use a day? We thought that the plastic was going to save us all, and now we're finding out really, truly that it's not. We use it in the medical field where I work. Your IV drugs that go into your body are sitting in plastic, going through plastic. So this is just a starting point. We have so much work to be done, but the cost to your health, that should be what you wouldn't care about. What dollar amount would you give to make sure that your loved ones are healthy? What dollar amount would you start to do now to make changes to make sure that the health of not only your body, your environment, your family, and your friends is more important than making a few dollars changes for your health? I'm in full support of it. I respect the fact that there's a lot of people who aren't ready for change. I wouldn't be standing up here if change did not come. For women, for minorities. And it's still not finished. There still needs to be help on that end. There's still in certain areas of even this town, this country, this world, where people are still being judged and not accepted. But if we didn't start somewhere, we wouldn't be where we are now. And I just encourage the town RTM to consider this. I do believe it is not a perfect ordinance, and I believe it needs to be revisited down the road, but it's a baseline to get to somewhere. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak? All right. Seeing none, we can move on. So the next item on our agenda is the receipt of communications, and I'll just mention a few that I received, and then I would like to turn the communication platform over to Representative Colon and Liz Porter, who's the Complete Count Committee Chair for the Town of Groton, 2020 census. So I received a letter and materials about the plastic ordinance from Liz Raisbeck, who spoke tonight, who's representing Groton Conservation Advocates. She sent her letter as well as a page of straw facts and a summary of the ordinance. I received an email from Peter Wilson, which I believe all of you received, which was entitled Groton's War Against Plastic. He was opposed to the ordinance. I received an email from Chris Kuhn, who urged us to vote in favor of the ordinance, and I received an email from Linda Vogel, who also supports the plastic ordinance. Are there any other communications that? Oh, and I also received communication from Representative Perry and Starkley that they would not be able to be here tonight, and from Representative Casper that he would be attending via a cell phone. Are there any other communications? Representative Washington?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I would just like the RTM to know that the National Institute of Senior Centers Accreditation Board met on December 19th, 2019, and unanimously approved recommendation for accreditation of the Groton Senior Center for a period of 5 years. And the Groton Senior Center will be accredited, and it will be a model for other senior centers. And this is a big thing because not all senior centers are accredited. So this is a big thing for the Groton Senior Center. So I'd just like to congratulate Mary Jo Riley and the rest of the staff of the Senior Center for getting accredited.
terrific. Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else? No? All right, seeing none, I would ask Representative Colon and Liz Porter to come up and speak they're going to speak about the census effort in Groton. And again, Liz is the Complete Count Committee Chair for the Town of Groton 2020 census effort.
Well, that's very strong. Okay. Glad everyone's awake. All right. Well, my name is Albert Colon. I'm a town representative, and I'm here with chair of our census for the Complete Count Committee for Groton, and it's Liz Porter, and I'll let her go on ahead and continue.
Oh, thank you. That was a good introduction. But anyway, I'm Liz Porter, and I was asked to chair this committee by Mayor Granatowski, and I said, sure. Well, little did I realize that this was going to be a full year process, but it's been very enlightening, and I wanted to give you some information so that you have you know where to go to get information if you're asked by your constituents, as well as if you, of course, can always contact me because I am the town's Complete Count Committee Chair. We do have Representative Colon is part of that committee, and there is a number of other individuals that are on that committee that represent both the town and the city. Can you put this down? Please. So first of all, I wanted to just tell you a little bit about the census is going to start, and this is very important because we need to get out the word. I have a back seat full of posters and flyers, and yet we still have some that aren't there yet. So this is a process that's beginning now. The Complete Count Committee, like Jill Rusk is also on that committee, we are going to be distributing these posters and hanging posters everywhere. We are trying to get the word out that the census is safe and it's secure, to make sure that it's easy and it's important. I didn't realize this when I took this all on, but the Complete Count Committee is trying to make sure that we get our share. Groton has been underrepresented, undercounted in at least the last census time in 2010. And we need to get our fair share because, quite frankly, every person who is not counted in Groton is $2,900 out of our pocket. Now that's a lot of money, and as a taxpayer and a almost lifelong resident of Groton, I would like to see that trend changed. We have the ability to get our fair share of the $675 billion in federal funding. Federal funding that goes towards Medicaid, SNAP, planning, Section 8 housing, special education. I didn't even realize that. Who knew? A retired teacher who never connected IDEA with money. Sorry about that, folks. A foster care, school lunch programs, health care centers. I didn't realize how far or what an impact the census is. And so I have to tell you, thank you, Mayor Granatowski, for forcing my hand. I do appreciate it. Believe me. So what can you do? Well, first of all, I want to give you some dates. On March 12th, the United States government is going to be sending out their first invites for people to self-respond. Self-respond means that you can go online and just record the information. There's only 7 questions. You may even make a phone call to the Census Bureau and they will take down your information. You may also wait for the paper to come out, which will be in about the beginning of April. And if none of that works, you will be getting a little knock at the door. I personally would like to see that Groton has very few people knocking and having to have their door knocked. But we do have some areas that we have to be addressing. And those areas are in our rental groups, especially Branford Manor is in the city, but also in Quantic Bridge as well. And when we get to see where the response rate is low, that's when the Complete Count Committee gets together and we go and plan an event to help those people who are in those areas to come to us. there in their safe spots in order to respond. We already have our first event planned. As a matter of fact, it's coming up really quickly. February 27th, Representative Colon and I, and probably I think a couple of other people, are going to be here at the Senior Center. We're going to have a booth set up right over here with information about the census. The library system on April 1st is hosting Census Day, and we're going to have places in the libraries for people to come out and to use the library's online systems, and we're there to help you. We can't answer it for them. We're just helping there to turn on a computer. And for somebody who is technologically challenged, believe me, I can turn these computers on. So what we need to do is we need your support. We need your support, especially in our high, low response areas. We need to get posters out. We need to continue to support those people who are trying to get this word out, because quite frankly, I'd like to see Groton get their fair share. And I'm doing everything I can to make sure that happens. And I'm sure we're going out to the libraries, to Human Services is helping out, our veterans are mobilized, even our faith communities are working. So I'm asking you for your support, and my email is around anywhere. We will have our Facebook page up and running, thanks to Albert. I think by tomorrow, we will have interviews on GMTV and SEC TV. So keep a lookout. Look for whatever way you can do. Get the word out. It's safe. It's easy. But most important, it is important to Groton's future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, you can add 2 words.
I'm just going to add 2 quick words to it. Many of you as RTM members may be wondering, why should this matter to me? And as Liz was stating, this is something that comes that the federal government is trying to give us free money. And we're saying, oh no, we're all set, we don't need money. But if we make sure that every single person gets counted in this town, we'll receive the correct funding that we need. And as the RTM, we go through the budget of the town, and we want to make sure we have the most amount of money we get. So, as the RTM, I ask all of you to please go around to your district. When people go and ask you, why should I respond to the census? Why is it that our education system here in Groton isn't as great as, I don't know, as Greenwich? You could say, well, if you respond to the census, we can make sure that we get this correct funding. And why should you respond to the census? Because it's safe, it's easy, it's important, and not only will it affect you for the next 10 years, but if you have someone that's 2 years old, a daughter that's 2 years old, or a son that's 2 years old, this kid's gonna be going through the education system. And this education system is not gonna be correctly funded for the next 10 years. That means by the time they get from elementary school to middle school, they won't be receiving this correct funding, and their whole school system will be underfunded. So I ask please all of you, go out to your districts, tell people about the census, make sure that they get counted, and tell them April 1st, at every single library here in Groton, there will be people who will be there to assist them to make sure they get counted. So I ask all of you, please, as representatives, go out and do this. And if you have any questions at all, reach out to me, reach out to Liz, reach out to the town councilors, and we're all here to help you out. Thank you so much.
Thank you. More than 2 words, but good. All right, we have Mr. Zagami, who's going to give us the report from the town manager and the financial report, I believe. Is that correct? Something along those lines?
Good evening. I'm Bob Zagami. I'm the assistant town manager and also the director of human resources. And tonight I was going to deliver the manager's report. First of all, the fund balance. As of January 31st, 2020, it's approximately $23 million, which is 18% of the FYE 2020 general fund adopted budget. The general contingency budget for FYE 2020 was appropriated at $350,000 with a current balance at $341,355. Note, the likely upcoming request for the Thames Street repair in the city is for $69,969.50. The Capital Reserve Fund balance as of January 31st, 2020 is estimated at $1 million. Our supplemental appropriation has been approved. Right now, looking at the staff, if you're wondering what we're doing, we're really diving into the budget process. We're trying to look over that as carefully as we can. The Crystal Lake Road, the Navy's looking to hold an appreciation ceremony for the Crystal Lake Road Improvement Project and new base sign sometime in late April. They are also looking to create an honorific, I've never seen that word before, naming of the road. Once that honorary name is arrived at, our Public Works will create and install the sign. I'll keep you informed as the details become available. Groton Sale. The Department of Transportation is expected to complete the 2 required appraisals for the property along the library/senior center by the end of February. The North Stonington Road Bridge. Initial indications from Stonington is that it is unlikely the Board of Finance is interested in funding their portion of the North Stonington Road Bridge. They're looking at the possibility of funding a small amount to close the bridge off on their side. If you're interested in the bridge, please attend the Stonington Board of Finance meetings or reach out to its members. And finally, on solar, the Public Works is looking at the Green Bank to try to have solar put on the new middle school and Cutler Elementary replacement. They're also discussing options with Groton Utilities for solar and other town facilities in their service areas. And that's at no cost to the town. And now I'm going to turn over to John Reiner, who's in attendance here, to give us an economic development update. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, we have a question. Representative Katowski?
Thank you. I was planning to ask, usually at this point in the meeting, when the town manager gives his report, then you can ask questions?
You can.
Okay. So I was going to request information for next month, and I was interested in the year-to-date status of 3 items. I'd like information regarding consultant fees, attorney fees, and encumbrances, and I was going to request the town manager detail that to the RTM next month, if that's possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Zagami? No? Mr. Reiner, thanks.
Thank you. Good evening, John Reiner, Director of Planning and Development Services. I just wanted to give a brief overview of what's happening as far as economic development in the town of Groton right now. One thing I do want to bring up with everyone is every month our economic development staff does a monthly economic development report. I know that is out in the town manager's, some of his weekly packets and the town council packets. I think everyone does get a copy of that. We usually go pretty in depth on what's happening with, most people seem to be interested in a lot of the excess school properties that we are marketing, such as the Mystic Education Center, Sealy, Colonel Ledyard, Pleasant Valley, so Groton Heights. So we do give some status updates on those, but I did want to dive in a little bit deeper on a number of items. Something exciting to announce, so next week, a week from tonight, at the Town Hall Annex in Community Room 1, we will be having an announcement about some conceptual plans for the Sealy School. Some mailers went out today, as well as some emails with a copy of this mailer here. Working with a preferred developer. The town council has not yet authorized the signing of a contract. We're working with the developer to look at some multifamily housing and development options there, presenting a concept plan out to the community, and want to get some feedback as we begin to take this forward. No planning and zoning approvals are in place yet. We're just very early in the conceptual design. We did do what we do with many of our properties. We did with Sealy. We put out an RFP. We had interviews, numerous interviews with firms. And we've been working with this firm for about a year, trying to move things ahead, and we're getting to that point where a committee as well has brought them to the town council, and we recommend moving forward with that group. In addition, the Mystic Education Center, we've been working with a preferred developer, Respler Homes. In November, they had a public outreach meeting similar to what we'll be doing next week, and they showed their proposed development concept for the old Mystic Education site. Again, want to make it very clear, step 1 in that process is the public education and outreach of what they're talking about doing, and there's still many steps that they have to go forward, such as actually getting the zoning in place, going through a planning and zoning process. They're still assembling some of the properties, a lot of those land use approvals, subdividing the property, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of things they still have to do with that property. It's not something that's set in stone, but they're just beginning to move that through the development process. Many of these school reuse projects take a long period of time, and each one is a pretty complicated process taking it through. Some other updates with Colonel Ledyard School. We're having our second round of interviews with some possible developers for that. The Pleasant Valley School, we've been marketing that for a number of months, and we expect to release an RFP for that school in the late spring of 2020. Groton Heights, we've been working with Thayer Mahan. That's the preferred developer on that site. We do have a signed letter of intent with them, and we've been working on a purchase and sales agreement with them for that particular property. And lastly, at the end of this month, February 27th, we're going to be having some public meetings releasing our economic development strategy. I think an announcement for that went out today. There are 3 different times and places of meetings that we're having. You don't need to attend all 3. We'll be talking about the same thing. We're just trying to give it multiple opportunities for people to come and hear about some of the directions and things that we're going to be doing over the coming years from an economic development perspective. And that's all I have to report tonight. Oh, sure.
Follow-up for Representative Kotowski. I heard consultant fees, attorney fees. What was the third thing?
Encumbrances.
Okay. Encumbrances, I assume, would be pretty easy for them just to track a number. I have the attorney fees I keep a spreadsheet on. Now, in terms of consultant fees, I'm not sure how much work that'll be. If it's much, I might ask you to submit a FOIA, but I'll get back with you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Reiner? No? All right, the next item on our agenda is the liaison reports. Let's see, Representative Foster, do you have a town council liaison report? Yeah, come on up here and do it if you like. Sure. Not at all. No. Representative Fitzgerald, do you have a Board of Ed report by chance? Is she here? Is Fitzgerald here?
Yeah, she said she was.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry, you're right in front of me. I'm looking in the back. Representative Rusk, any Economic Development Commission report?
Commission meetings on January 9th and on February 6th. Just a couple things. The Economic Development Commission is establishing a business forum series to address issues that impact businesses in the community. The first forum is scheduled for March 30th to discuss the Plastic Ordinance, and they're planning additional quarterly forums throughout the year. The EDC is working on business outreach. They're personally inviting people or business owners to this forum. They're working to establish a database of business emails to improve communication. I know that's been a concern of a number of people. And the Economic Development Commission put out its 2019 annual report. Is that something that is already available to the public? The 2019 annual report for the Economic Development Commission, is that online?
I believe so. It was just in a packet for the last
Right.
Economic Development Commission, so yeah, that'd be fine. Yeah.
Okay. The Downtown Mystic merchants reported that they are working on a parking survey to determine parking concerns in Downtown Mystic. There's a number of new businesses in Downtown Mystic, including Fat Face, Mystic River Chocolate Cafe, Polish Stoneware Store, Queenie's, and Authentic One Life. The subbase is working with the town to receive bids for the Nautilus water taxi dock, because that didn't go through the first round of bidding. And the subbase is working with CMAQ Groton Utilities, the state of Connecticut, to establish a 7.4 megawatts of fuel cell generation and a microgrid on the base. The Groton Beautification Committee is hosting a fundraiser on Sunday, February 16th, which is this Sunday at 2 p.m. at Grill 92 at Fairview, and Jim Streeter, who's the town historian, will be presenting on Groton landmarks. It's $20 per person, and the money goes towards the Groton Beautification Committee. That's it.
Thank you. Representative Foster, are you ready to go? There you go.
Sorry about that. All right, tip number 2. So this is going to be a little dry, so I'm sorry. I'm just going to go through what's happened at the last few town council meetings since this last RTM. So January 14th was the cow. Item number 2020 TAC 15, the fiscal year 2019 CAFR, which is the comprehensive annual financial report, was presented by the auditors. They found no deficiencies. They did have 2 recommendations for the Board of Ed to provide status on grants and to have a fraud/risk assessment done. 2020 TAC 12, the Connecticut DPURA Public Education Governmental Programming and Education Technology Grant. This is to update all of the cameras in CR1 in the Town Hall Annex. It's a grant for $30,000. It'll cover all the costs. The Town Council went into a Town Council meeting and actually approved this. Then they returned back to the Committee of the Whole. The next item, 2020 TAC 16, tax abatement program for surviving spouse of a police officer. The Town Council had a lot of questions, so they're holding off until those questions could be answered. 2019 TAC 798, RTM town email accounts. The cost of those was $1,800 per year for each account. Due to the cost, no action was taken. 2020 TAC 18, Town Council 824 referral. Due to state law, sale of municipal property has to go through planning to ensure it's consistent with the plan of conservation and development. The Town Council voted in favor of referring the sale of the Colonel Ledyard, Groton Heights, and Pleasant Valley school properties to the Planning and Zoning Commission to meet this requirement. And then the next 2 items were in executive session, which was 2019 TAC 786, about for Betty tax issue, and 2019 TAC 326, TAC 3, the update on excess property redevelopment. Okay, so January 21st was the Town Council Board retreat, so there was nothing to report. January 28th, the Town Council cow. The first item, 2020 TAC 47, Assistant Director of Library Services. This was a personnel realignment, merged positions, and is within the current budget that Town Council approved. 2020 TAC 43, Board of Ed update. The superintendent and assistant superintendent provided an update. There was no action. 2020 TAC 44, Mystic Education Center, development agreement and project overview. An update of the status of the project was provided by Mr. Reiner and Mr. Bronk, as well as the framework for the development of the agreement. The Town Council voted in favor of recommending a resolution to authorize the Town Manager, John Burt, to execute the development agreement between the Town Council, between the Town of Groton and Rustler Homes. The next item, 2019-805, installation of solar panels on new schools. This is in regards to Connecticut Green Bank. They would provide and install solar panels at no cost to the town with an agreement to purchase the energy produced. This was just a letter of intent, and the Town Council voted in favor of that resolution with the amendment to explore other options. 2020 TAC 41, short-term rental discussion. Mr. Reiner's as well as several residents in the town had a discussion of short-term rentals. There was no motion, but the town council decided to set up a working group to help progress the discussion along. Next item, 2020 TAC 40, endorsement of the Southeastern Connecticut Council of Governments, SCCOG, Regional Performance Incentive Program, RPIP applications. The town manager explained this process is a first step in regionalization. There's a pilot program that will allow the hiring of a regional code enforcement official, grant writer, and human resources staff / consultant. The town council approved the motion to recommend a resolution authorizing essentially this really long acronym. So new business is requested. The town staff put together a list of contact information for all the businesses in town, and also stated that our playing fields need to be updated within the town. The next meeting, February 4th. This was a joint COW with the city council. The first item that was discussed was the 2020 TAC 68 Thames Street repairs. The city mayor explained due to washout on Thames Street, the city's requesting $69,969.50 for the repairs. At the time, just a discussion was held on this. Next item was 2020 TAC 41 TAC 1, the short-term rentals. The town's working group for short-term rentals was discussed, and the city mayor said he would like to be involved and asked other city councilors to be involved, and just a discussion was held. The next item, 2019 526 TAC 2, Sustainability and Climate Resilience Manager. The city expressed interest in splitting this position 50-50 with the town, and only discussion was held, and negotiations will continue on that. The next item, 2020 TAC 69, Highways Fund Committee, the establishment of a new committee between the town and the city, and committee members were named from both the town and the city. So after that, the February 4th, the town council had their regular meeting. So I'll just go through this kind of quickly. The Mystic Education Center Development Agreement Project Overview was passed. The fiscal year 2019 CAFR was passed. The installation of solar panels on new schools passed. Assistant Director of Library Services passed, and endorsement of, again, the long regionalization acronym, applications passed. New business is the request for an update on the Spicer House. Okay, so on February 5th, there was a joint meeting with the RTM Town Council and Board of Ed. Since we were part of that, I'm not going to go over that. February 11th, yesterday, the COW item 2020 TAC 76, the athletic fields updates. Information was provided on previous field studies. In the recent past was provided, and it was recommended to put together a working group with members of the Town Council, Board of Ed, and RTM. 2020 TAC 77, the Mystic Coastal Access Plan. There was a presentation given on a recommendation on how to improve signage for the coastal access areas, and a recommendation for creating clearly marked pedestrian path in Mystic. The Town Council voted in favor of the idea. The next item, 2020 TAC 78, the Police Department update. Chief Fasaro just provided an update on the police force. 2020 68 TAC 1, the Thames Street repairs. The Town Council voted in favor of providing the money to the city for the washout on Thames Street. And 2019 TAC 326, the update on excess property and redevelopment. There was an update on the Sealy School was provided, and then Town Council went into executive session, and that's all I have to report. So,
Yeah, that was amazing. So Representative Wells, do you have anything to report from the Golf Advisory Commission? Oh, good. With bated breath.
Well, we have a bit of good news. The December revenue for the course was 29% higher than the previous December and 25% greater than the average of the previous 4 years. And January was 132% higher than the previous January and 59% higher than the previous 4-year average. Plus, last weekend, the first weekend of February, my postman in Old Mystic, who lives near the course and plays, he said it was mobbed, and confirmed at the Monday meeting, they said the course, it was crazy, which doesn't mean March could be a killer, but last year was horrible, and we burned through a surplus of funds. Anyway, on to they considered a 2 or 3% increase in season passes and decided to leave them the same, leave them unchanged. Greens fees are already higher than our competitors, Elmridge and Norwich, but we offer views of submarines. The new online booking software is proving quite popular, and it's also efficient for people who do not book online, because once the information is in the system, they can call up and just provide a bare amount of information and have their reservations made. The software collects emails, and they expect to do once these new rates are confirmed by the town council, they'll send out an email to all these people's addresses to tell them the rates are indeed still a bargain. They're short 3/4 of the Rangers they need, and there's hope that the inexpensive Ranger season pass will lure some skilled people, and the Rangers keep the course in order, make sure everything is as it should be, and assist players with questions, problems, and generally improve the pace of play. As far as the only quality of life issue to come up, and I know you enjoy these, but is that they found the neighbors have complained about 21 trees along the 11th fairway. And the survey confirms that they do belong to us, and an arborist confirms the neighbors were right, they need to come down. And I just learned this evening from the chairwoman of the Golf Advisory Board, who's here for a meeting, she says they are down. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Mella Miller, do you have anything to report from the Parks Advisory Committee or the Trails Advisory Committee? No? Okay. All right, that brings us to the next item on our agenda, which is a Community Development and Services Committee. Did have a meeting. Representative or Chairman Luck, would you like to give your report?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. RTM Community Development and Services Committee met on January 29, 2020 at 6 p.m. at the Senior Center, Room A. Members present were Lisa Luck, Chair, Robert Bailey, Autumn Hanscom, Jean Baker, Albert Colon, and Lauren Gauthier. A quorum was declared. Also present were Patrice Granatowski, Mayor, Kristen Destante, Bray Rafferty, Larry Dunn, Conservation Committee, Eugenia Villagra, Liz Raisbeck, Groton Conservation Advocates, Conrad Heed, Town Councilor, John Burt, Town Manager, John Reiner, Director of Planning, Kathy Chase, RTM member, Sima Eben, RTM moderator, Juan Melendez, Town Councilor, and Rodrigo Bello, community member. Jane Reiner gave overview of the ordinance. Questions were asked concerning whether ordinance applies to town only, yes, not to the city of Groton or Groton Long Point, and is there enough time for restaurants to get ready? There is a 90-day grace period after the 6 months before the ordinance becomes effective. How will it be enforced was another question. There will be an enforcement officer. In the next 5 months, the town will be talking about voluntary compliance. James Reiner answered questions. He also reported that the price of plastic is rising and wholesalers are selling plastic at a higher rate of late, so businesses are more inclined to support the ordinance. Jay Baker and A. Hanscom expressed their support for the ordinance. R. Bello stated that it is important to find additional sources besides plastic and paper because of the trees. L. Dunn and K. DeSante reported that there were other sources. R. Bailey thought that the ordinance is the trendy thing to do and that the ordinance is confusing and will be revised in another 6 months. Sima Eben responded that the shore near her house is covered in plastic debris, that plastics are out there and into the marine food webs which we ingest. El Gothier asked about the efficacy of drive-through windows enforcement. Jay Burt responded that it is covered in the business establishment's language. C. Heed spoke of adapting as we go forward and that it's not intended to cause a hardship. R. Bailey made a motion to veto the ordinance. L. Gothier seconded. No further discussion. Vote was 1 for, 5 against, no abstentions. Motion failed. R. Bailey made a motion to adjourn. L. Gothier seconded it. All in favor to adjourn at 6:45 p.m. Respectively submitted, Lisa M. Luck.
Would you like to make a motion to accept?
Yes, I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as written.
Representative Bailey, are you seconding that?
We
need a second.
Excuse me.
We need a second.
Okay, I
Second
request
on-
to
Just 1 minute.
amend.
Representative Lambert is seconding it. Thank you. So we have a motion on the floor to accept the minutes of the RTM Community Development and Services Committee, which met on January 29th at 6 p.m. Representative Bailey, did you want to be recognized? to
Yes,
speak?
Madam Moderator,
Okay.
thank you very much. I request to make an amendment to the minutes,
Okay.
and I have a copy. I was incorrectly quoted, and what I did say is Robert Bailey stated that he is against this ordinance because it is confusing. And they plan on looking at it and revising it every 6 to 9 months, which will cause more confusion. Any good ordinance would not have to be constantly revised and revisited, indicates that this is a bad ordinance. We currently have disposal for plastic, which is turned into energy through clean incineration.
Representative Bailey, can I just say that I don't think that there was a transcript of your comments. I think it was a summary of it. Do you want all of this read into the minutes?
I'm about halfway through.
Is this what you want in the minutes? So that's what
Yes,
we're
please.
discussing is an amendment to the minutes.
Yes, please.
Okay. You'll have to probably give a copy of this in a
Yes.
written format because no one will
I
be able
have
to
one.
write it. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, through clean incineration and the law against littering is a infraction of about $200 for each offense. Having more laws over and around what is current, just because it's a trendy thing to do, would increase confusion and cost, which is not good for the morale in Groton. Thank you very much, and
You don't need that
respectfully,
part because
thank
that
you.
wouldn't be in the minutes, okay? You're just amending the minutes. Right?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
So I think we could leave out the thank you because no one else said that. And it's just a summary of what you said, but we will, if you will submit that to the town clerk, we can have that. Are there any other amendments to consider for these minutes? Any corrections? All right, so we have a motion on the floor that's been amended. All in favor of accepting the minutes as amended from the RTM Community Development and Services Committee meeting, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that motion passes unanimously, although I'm not sure we've heard from Representative Casper.
Okay, I didn't hear you.
Okay.
He did it on.
He's listening. There you go. So thank you. We have that. Now, I just want to spend a moment to mention that at this point, the RTM has only 2 options, right? We can, we are not under any requirement to do anything with this. The only thing we can do if we choose to do nothing is to veto it, but that's not a requirement. So I will leave it up to this body to see if they want to put a motion on the floor. Representative Katowski?
I'd like to make a motion to veto the ordinance.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Robert Bailey? Representative Bailey? All right, so we have a motion to veto the ordinance number 293, which is known as the Plastic Ordinance. We'll just call it that.
Do I go first?
So we have a motion on the floor. It's been seconded. Is there any discussion on this motion to veto? Representative Katowski.
Thank you. I realize that this ordinance is going to pass tonight, but I want to give you some perspective that I guarantee you will not hear from anyone else tonight. If you're not old enough to remember these environmental catastrophes of the past, you're not old enough to understand how the game is played. In the 60s, we were told oil reserves would be depleted in 10 years. In the 70s, we were told that there would be another ice age in 10 years. In the 80s, we were told that acid rain will destroy all crops in 10 years. In the 90s, we were told that the ozone layer will be destroyed in 10 years. In the 2000s, we were told that the ice caps will be gone in 10 years. Then there was global warming that morphed into climate change, and now we're being told that the world will end in 12 years. None of these catastrophes happened, but all resulted in more taxes and regulations. This is what I believe is happening here. This is step one to more government overreach and regulation. As I have stated several times before, the Town of Groton ordinance banning single-use plastic is not equitable. Why? Because the City of Groton and Groton Long Point are not covered in the ordinance. Does the Town of Groton really believe that it is equitable to place this additional cost on only selective businesses in the Town of Groton, but not the City or Groton Long Point? During the 3 presentations for this ordinance that I have seen, there has been zero documentation regarding contacting businesses prior to approving the ordinance. We are told that someone went down Main Street Mystic, and there was an anonymous survey on the town website, but zero documentation. The people affected the most were unaware until after the ordinance was headed for approval. I guess I am interested in how Groton is doing with recycling. I know I am doing everything I can to recycle, and I'm sure everyone in this room is as well. The slides at the presentation were not from Groton. We all know that the rest of the world is dumping more into the oceans than we are. This is a feel-good ordinance which will provide few results. The best thing the Town of Groton can do for the environment is to pick up the litter in and on the sides of the streets and roads in town. If all property owners took responsibility for keeping their properties free from litter, as well as properties across the street if vacant, that would be proactive with actual results. One last comment. Whoever invents a NIPS recycle machine is going to be rich. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Burt, would you like to say something?
Just wanted to touch base. I agree on the nips. I find them in our parking lot all the time. It's amazing. And I'm next to the golf course, and I find them in my yard all the time. I wanted to touch base on just to mention the ordinance not applying to the city or to GLP, and then John will mention outreach to businesses. As we know, the GLP and the city are their own essentially subdivisions. Well, the city is the city, but they have their ability to do their own ordinances, and according to their attorney, our ordinances would not apply to them. So that's, unless we want to get into a large legal fight, that was not something we had control over. So.
As far as public outreach, we didn't specifically document every single business that we went to, but staff from my office went to numerous businesses down Route 1 in downtown Groton, as well as the Route 12 corridor. They walked through and knocked on met with many businesses in downtown Mystic, and on November 18th, the night before the public hearing, our Economic Development Commission, working with staff, held a public forum to hear from the business community on this particular item. In addition, the Conservation Commission, working with staff, did have a larger public forum in this very meeting, not necessarily geared directly just towards citizens, but towards businesses, but instead towards the citizens of the town on public outreach. In addition, our Conservation Commission and other members of the community in town did go around in downtown Mystic and in other businesses throughout town, talking to them about this plastics ordinance that was coming through. And I can remember at least 2, if not 3 or more newspaper articles over the course of the year that we were working on this ordinance with the town council that talked about the town moving forward in this direction. So there was some public outreach done before that, before the public hearing and before the adoption. And right now, our Economic Development Commission actually has a tentative scheduled date for March 30th to have another public forum with our business community, geared towards the business community, to talk to them about transitioning to getting away from single-use plastics, having businesses in town that are doing that already speak and share ideas of some of the things that they've done.
Representative Colon?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I just wanted to say I'm not in favor of vetoing this. I want to state that, as I stated before, when the councilors had when they were going over the ordinance, and I can't really say because there was little kids earlier. I used to say I'm the youngest person in the room, but there were little kids around here. But I truly care about my future, and I care about Groton so much. I grew up here. This is a town where, although I was born in New York City, I lived here since I was 2 years old, and this is honestly a town that has done so much good for me. And if I want to see this town care even more about me as much as I care about this town, I think this is an ordinance that we should allow to pass. This is something that we have to prove to our kids, prove to our grandkids how much you love them. And, you know, as I stated before, that what I heard in my church was that if you love someone, you'll make a sacrifice. Well, if you truly love your kids and grandkids, allow this to pass, because this is something that will affect them in the future. And if you don't want to clean up this mess, great. Well, a lot of us will still be here to have to clean up this mess at the end of the day. And as somebody has stated before, this is something that maybe that we think, oh, we shouldn't have to do because the state of Connecticut isn't enforcing it. But something that Councilor Baumgartner has said before was that maybe the state of Connecticut isn't doing it, but they'll look down at the town of Groton and they'll say, wow, look at what the town of Groton is doing, and will be something that will influence the state, that will influence the whole state in general. So I ask us please to allow this to pass. And as I stated, if you truly care about the future, you truly care about the kids, tell them right now, because some of them are watching us right now as we're talking. And I want us to prove to them how much we care about them. Thank you so much, Madam Moderator.
Thank you. Representative Whitehouse?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. First, I'm sure someone will be concerned, the value of this straw is under $10, so there's no ethics issue of receiving a gift. I looked it up. So as for looking to the future, I'm currently in the early stages of house shopping to buy a house here in Groton, because I intend to be here for a very long time. And I realized one consideration in my home search is looking at the elevation of any property I buy, because I want to make sure that 20, 30 years from now, the property I buy is still land and not water. And it's a little bit surreal to be considering that, but that is actually a real consideration. This is a real thing. And we're talking about costs. We're going to pay sooner or later. We're going to pay in economic costs now. We're going to pay in economic costs later. And yes, Groton's ordinance is not going to save the world. And most likely Hartford will not look at Groton and be like, well, if Groton's doing it, okay, now it's time to act. That's the tipping point. We need to act now. But it's one more pebble that makes the avalanche. To address some of the history that Representative Katowski brought up, I'm actually glad she did, because so back in the 60s, it was predicted that oil was going to run out based on knowledge at the time. And so considerable research was done to find more oil, both in the oceans, and fracking was developed in order to get more oil. So oil was going to run out. Science advanced to solve that problem. In the 80s, there was the acid rain scare. And they said acid rain was going to destroy all our crops. And so we passed laws to ban certain emissions. which reduced acid rain. We solved that problem. The ozone layer is actually really in the 80s that was a big thing. And actually, I did a quick bit of research, and I discovered that two noted hippie environmental liberals, Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher, teamed up to create a ban on CFCs, which end up reversing the ozone layer. And yes, for a while, people thought the ozone layer would be gone forever. You're reading a sci-fi from the 80s, and it talks about you can't go outside without wearing a hat in 2020, and we took action. We reversed that. And then after that, I guess we decided, okay, we're done with the environment. We're done solving environmental problems. We're not going to solve any more. They don't exist anymore, so it's fine. But I don't know if anyone else has noticed. Representative Wells alluded to this. The business of the golf course is up 132% in January. And December, I think it was up 37%. And now I was thinking that's because the temperature was up 37% in December. We didn't have a winter. We had fall that kind of segued into spring. I think it snowed once-ish. So something's happening. And I think that it is time to take some action. And this isn't dramatic action, not world-changing action, but it's also not dramatic action in the sense that it's going to drive companies out of business and change everyone's habits. I think there will be some growing pains. I think there will be some discontent. But at the same time, for the businesses to do get pushback, they can say, well, blame the town. So it's not going to fall on them. It's going to come to the town. And I think that other towns will feel more comfortable to follow, I hope. And I do certainly feel for the owners of Dunkin' Donuts, or Dunkin', I guess it is now, because I understand what it's like to deal with an implacable corporate overlord. But I think that the more towns take action, the more businesses are going to see the writing on the wall and be like, oh, we got to do this. We're getting more and more pushback from our franchisees, who are now in a tough spot. And it is, I do regret that we are putting them in a tough spot, but I think that will create that effect going up. So I will definitely I'll be voting against vetoing the ordinance. I'm in favor of the ordinance. One suggestion I had, though, is that now the ordinance is coming, it might be good to do a mail, I don't know if we've done just mailing letters out to all the restaurants, because while we don't have a complete list of businesses, Ledgelight should have a complete list of restaurants, because I would hope that they all have licenses through Ledgelight. And if they don't, well, that's a whole different thing. But most of them should have licenses through Ledgelight because they're all restaurants. So just sending a letter, because I'd imagine they probably open letters addressed to them from the town of Groton, because it could be important, like an ordinance. Thank you, Madam Moderator.
Thank you. Representative Baker?
Since I feel that Thank you, Madam Moderator. Since I feel that everyone in the room here probably has made up their minds pretty well, I move the question.
Second.
I'm going to use my discretion to keep it open 10 more minutes, and I'm going to just keep it for the next two people who had their hands up. So I'm going to, but first we have to have the vote on that to see if it passes. It's not debatable, and it is by a 2/3 majority. But just so you know, that's what I plan to do if it passes. So we just have a show of hands? Okay. All in favor, you don't. All in favor of moving the question, which will mean ending debate, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Did you get them all?
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah, but I'll say your name out loud.
Okay.
Eben? Luck? Frickman? Keep your hands up again. Oh, there's more than there were before. Flax? Hanscom? Whitney? You can put your hands down when I say L. Gothier? Dean Shinbrot? Foster? Foster? What's that guy's name? I see your name. What's his name? What's his name? Thomas, sorry. Katowski? Chase? Adams? Lambert? And Osman. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 15 noes. And 39, 15, 4, 2, 24,
That's not,
25, excuse me.
so we don't have, so that motion fails. So the debate has not ended, and I will call on Representative Osman.
I was just going to say, thank you, Madam Moderator. You know, I remember 30 years ago when I was in school, the biggest problem, I can remember them telling us in school was about the trees. And we were using too much paper and to recycle paper. And now we're kind of going back to cutting down trees again. So, you know, I'm just kind of confused by that. So that's all I had to say about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Thomas?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. So I like the analogy of the cut in the kitchen and stopping the bleeding. I think that's an important thing to remember. You know, it makes no sense to go around mopping up stuff if you haven't stopped the source of the problem. And while this ordinance is not perfect, it is a start. I would look forward to seeing some amendments. I would create an appeal process of some kind for anyone who may find themselves on the wrong side of the ordinance. And I would like to see some sort of motion on getting, you know, finding some city residents maybe to push forward on the city council to make a similar ordinance. However, that's not anything we can resolve right here. What we have before us is to veto or not to veto. So I will be not vetoing tonight, if I said that correctly. And the pressure on corporations to do the right thing has always historically come from the people and principled legislation with the idea of moving forward into a direction of more positive outcomes. So we have a responsibility to act responsibly once we get the information. And you know, not to get into whole refutations of other people's assertions, you know, there's lots of ways to adapt to the future. And, you know, oscillating between paper and plastic, yeah, paper is recyclable. It can be recycled. And plastic is difficult, especially the plastic bags and all the other little plastics is, you know, 1,000 different kinds. So that's the problem, is that, you know, there's that. And there's also other alternative forms like the glass straws, metal straws, hemp-based plastics that are biodegradable. So, you know, until we put ourselves in a pressurized situation to move forward, we are just going to kind of, you know, drift sideways in an ocean full of plastic. So I am in support of the ordinance, and that's all I got to say about that.
Thank you. Representative Flax?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Is this on?
Yep.
Okay. Just a couple of things. I do support the ordinance. I think that, you know, truth be told, it's good for the town. I think that from a watching it all play out standpoint, that it would be nice if when we go through these things we learn, and that where there were businesses who didn't know, that instead of the people in charge saying, we called this business and that business, I would hoping we'd hear that they would say, I'm sorry, we missed some businesses, and we'll make sure they make the list the next time. Instead of, you know, I understand there was an effort made, but there's always going to be a bigger effort. And so if when these things come through, if we can learn from them and make the outreach and do what we do better and have less contentiousness, I think that's a good thing. Representative, State Rep De La Cruz had mentioned that he had a lot of people talking about the plastic bag ban, which I certainly support. I think my issue with it was that the 10-cent tax that was on it, if we really cared about the environment, we wouldn't attach a 10-cent tax to it. And I know I heard that, John, you had said that you guys were doing outreach to business and you were putting together a business list, and Representative Whitehouse's idea about from the Ledge Lighthouse, I saw you write down, is a great idea to make sure we catch them all. And hopefully down the road, we can have some kind of composting talk too about getting rid of the food that we put in our waste, and that wouldn't cost any money, but find a disposal place for it. So, thank you.
Thank you. Representative Dean Shinbrot.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I guess I'm just a little different than everyone else. I don't normally get up and say a word. I vote, and that's how everybody knows how I feel. I was so upset with the presentation that was given last month because it had so little to do with our area. It felt like propaganda to me. And I stewed for a month, and I thought, I'll calm down, and I didn't. So that's why I'm getting up and speaking. I think the group did a valiant effort, and I think their heart's in the right place. But I don't think the group has truly given the businesses in the town of Groton a chance to digest this and come up with a plan. And I think they deserve that. If we're going to be a business-friendly community, we need to give the businesses a chance to find an alternative to plastic products and polystyrene. And we haven't done that. We haven't contacted them. After the last RTM meeting, I went to the shack and I talked to them and I asked them, to my husband's chagrin, because he hides in the booth because he doesn't want to hear my angst, and they had no idea. They didn't know about the possibility of the ban. And they said, what are we going to do? We serve greasy diner food. What are we going to put it in? And I said, well, have you ever considered this? They said, no. And they have stacks of polystyrene. And it's not that anyone is against banning plastic. No one wants to see it in the oceans. But we have to give the community a chance to come up with alternatives. And I think we need a longer phase-in period. We gave the plastic bags ban, what, a 1-year phase-in to make sure everybody knew. Then we kind of had plastic bags still sitting at the register you could buy. And there were paper bags there you could buy. But we phased it in. We need to allow the businesses to do the same thing. I want the shack here. I want the small businesses. It's not just corporate businesses. I feel bad for the Dunkin' Donuts people. I understand their hands are tied. But I also understand the economic impact to our small businesses to have to get rid of product they already have in order to support the plastic ban we're about to enact. And I think we really need to veto this to give the businesses a chance to digest this, be business friendly, and let them come up with an alternative and revisit it at a later date. Thank you.
So again, just to remind us, the only thing we can do is veto it. The ordinance has already been passed. Representative Stevenson?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. A lot of things I want to talk about. I think the biggest thing on my mind, though, is how we treat businesses like they get somehow a special vote. This is a democracy. This is a representative democracy. We represent people. We don't represent buildings. We don't represent people above anyone else. And the outreach today demonstrated that the people that we represent are in full support of this ordinance. So I hear a lot of considerations for the businesses, and not a lot of consideration for what the people have already spoken to, which is in support of this ordinance. I would also like to add, I wasn't alive for it, but I'm noticing a lot of rhetoric in this room that reminded me a lot of the pro-smoking groups back in the day. The science isn't in, this is small steps, blah, blah, blah. And the whole time, it's just to create debate. It's just to keep moving it along. And every step there continues to not have to make changes. They continue to make the profits. So don't think we should fall for this little trick of, oh, we just got to continue to debate, because while we're debating, nothing's getting done. So I fully support implementing this ordinance. I'll be voting against vetoing it, and I just wanted to remind everyone here that you are representing people. You are not representing special interests. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see anyone else, so I'm wondering if Representative Frickman.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Just a couple of things. I actually came into this kind of in between, but I'm definitely leaning towards supporting this. But I just want to say, almost what Representative Flax was referencing, I'm disappointed in the way the council and the committee went about doing this. I think it could have been done better. And when we pass imperfect bills, and I think the quote tonight by Councilor Borderline was, "It's not a perfect bill. It could be changed. It's not perfect." Well, in my opinion, I'd rather did everything in my due diligence to get a perfect bill before it's passed. So we don't have to make all these changes over and over and over again. That should have been done ahead of time. On top of that, the rhetoric tonight on both sides, I just want to add, I'm done with it, but thank you.
Representative Powers?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Just briefly, I have a couple of statements. I don't know how many of us understand what goes in the water and the fact that we drink water every day. And the subject we're talking about is pretty important to me. I worked in the nuclear power industry, and the ocean has been the biggest waste basket in the world, okay? And anything we can do to take any of this out of the environment through the water that we drink, because that's where our water comes from the ocean, okay? The toxic waste that we dump, the nuclear waste that we dump, the plastics that are there, the lobbying groups that gave us plastic to begin with, okay, have to be held accountable for something. Anyone who's done business, and I appreciate the fact that people have to change, we all do. When it comes to styrofoam, it's probably the worst thing. You look at the real estate industry, and when people build and buy houses, if I told you how much plastic was in the houses now, you wouldn't believe me. It's incredible. So what little this may seem to be doing is a lot, okay? I don't know if anybody follows Fukushima in Japan. The amount of plastics and the amount of things that are floating around in the ocean just from the tsunamis that we have, okay, and the waste that goes all around the world, that we're literally breathing and eating it. So we should make aware of the fact that we have an opportunity as a body to change some things locally for us, which I'm going to ask Director Reiner now. What grants do we get for doing good things to the environment in the town? And how much economic and community development will we get from becoming a green community? Because from what I understand from Albert here, this is what we're going towards. And all of the kids that I deal with when they go to buy houses want a clean environment. Okay? It's their world, and they're speaking out about it. So from my standpoint and from my constituent standpoint, I'm going to not be voting for a veto, okay? And I think everyone should just take their conscience and vote it here, because it's your kids and it's your family, and it's the cancer that comes out of all of this stuff that we all have to deal with. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a motion on the floor to veto ordinance number 293, which is the plastics ordinance. I'm going to call it that. If you vote, there'll be a yes, all in favor and opposed. If you are in favor, I'm just trying to explain this, you'll be in favor of vetoing. So if you are not in favor of vetoing it, then you would be opposed to it. Does that make sense? I just want to, we've done this before, I just want to make sure everyone's voting for the thing they want to vote for, okay? So we're going to have a motion on the floor, and I'll say all in favor of vetoing, please say aye. And we'll probably have a roll call vote. And this, again, takes 2/3 of the body, not just of the members present, but of the entire body, which is 28 votes, okay, to veto. All right, so can we please commence with a roll call vote?
Yep.
Thank you.
Adams? Yes or no?
Abstain.
Abstain, okay. Bailey?
Yes.
Baker?
No.
Casper?
No.
Casari?
No.
Chase?
No.
Cologne?
No.
Crockett Hubbard?
No.
Dean Shinbrot?
Yes.
DeSailor Fleming?
No.
Fitzgerald?
No.
Flax?
No.
Fortner?
No.
Foster?
No.
Frickman?
No.
Gothier David?
No.
Lauren?
No.
Gustafson?
No.
Hanscom?
No.
Jones?
No.
Katowski?
Yes.
Lambert?
No.
Luck?
No.
Mello Miller?
No.
Merritt?
Abstain.
Osman?
Yes.
Powers, K?
No.
Powers, S?
No.
Richards?
No.
Rusk?
No.
Silva?
No.
Stevenson?
No.
Thomas?
No.
Washington?
No.
Wells?
No.
Whitehouse?
No.
Whitney?
No.
Evan?
No.
Okay. That's 4 in favor, 32 opposed, and 2 abstentions.
Okay, that motion
Fails.
fails. 32, 4 in favor, 32 opposed, and 2 abstentions. So the next item on our agenda is budget discussions and other business. Is there any desire to discuss the budget at this point? All right. Is there any, Representative Stevens?
Hi, thank you, Madam Moderator. Just a quick question. When do the budget books come out?
Usually in March.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Is there, there's any other discussion? I just want to put it out there because sometimes people jump the gun, because I'm going to allow another motion, which would be the motion to adjourn. But who made the motion? Frickman, thank you. Representative Frickman, seconded by Bailey. All in favor of adjourning? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next month in March.